Back, of course, talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth. We're here to talk about the Dyne segment from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is, of course, my favorite segment of the original Final Fantasy VII. Up to the hype, do they do the scene justice? Did they let your boy down? Let's hop into it.
I know the man who murdered all those people. Dyne. My best friend.
So the scene, of course, opens up with a flashback. It's very similar, more or less, to the original FF7. It's just expanded, of course, for the remake project. But we get to see what happened to the original town of Corel, where Shinra built a reactor here, but it exploded. There's an accident, whatever happens. And they tried to just destroy this to cover it up. It's kind of insane, actually. Which, of course, Shinra does have a history of when it comes to other locations in Final Fantasy VII, with towns like Nibelheim and Kalm. For some reason, not Gungaga. There was a reactor destruction there, explosion, whatever, but they didn't just burn down Gungaga for some reason. When it came to like Barrett's flashback story, I was hoping we'd get a playable segment and kind of get to see the original town of Corel. And I thought we were going to get that right here, because when it first they come across like the destroyed town, the way the camera pans right here behind Barrett, it looks like it's going to go into like third person controlling him, but it doesn't. Overall, the scene is fine for what it is. You get the backstory and how Barrett and Dyne both lost their arms. I do have a couple problems with this segment. The first one being whenever Barrett and Dyne are behind cover, like Shinra's shooting down at them, the Shinra troops. Like, Dyne's plan is, let's just run for it, which makes no sense. Like, if you have sustained fire, if they're actively shooting at you, you would not just run out from cover. You'd at least wait till they maybe reload or hopefully run out of bullets or something like that. We even see, like, right before Barrett and Dyne start running, that there's shooting the ground literally right in front of Dyne, like a foot in front of him, and the plan is just to run for it, I guess.
Ready? For what?
Still so quick to throw in the towel, ain't you?
Don't get me wrong, like, I understand that Dyne's probably not thinking clearly because he's concerned about Eleanor Marlene potentially being back in the village or whatever. But, like, right after this, when they go to run, Barrett gets shot in the leg, Dyne tackles him to safety, but, like, falls off the cliff or whatever, and Barrett catches him. And then we see the troops stop and reload. So, like, if they just waited a brief amount of time, they probably could have ran safely.
Barrett! Dyne!
So I thought that was just a little bit weird just because, like, you wouldn't run out in active gunfire. It makes more sense if, like, they ran out when, like, the guys were reloading or something and then, like, maybe got shot as they're running. Like, they could have just done it that way. I think it would have worked a little bit better. The problem I have with this segment is how both of their arms get messed up versus the original FF7. The original FF7, Dyne's hanging there. You're seeing the gunfire hit the wall and lead up to the arms, and then Dyne falls, right, when they get shot. In this version, for some reason, it's the goofiest shit I've ever seen because they sit there and shoot Barrett and Dyne's arms for 20 seconds straight.
Oh, how very brave.
It's just kind of hard to take serious because when it comes to like the Final Fantasy games, like outside of combat, things are relatively normal. That's why getting stabbed kills you. That's why you see Cloud actively blocking bullets, because like if you were to get shot, he'd fucking die, right? So to see Barrett and Dyne sit there and sustain gunfire for 20 seconds from like 3 or 4 machine guns at like one point, it was just kind of weird. You could say that it's like Barrett's determination to not drop his friend, and that's probably what they were going for there. But like after getting shot in the arm 400 times, I think you'd probably drop your friend. But also, Barrett's a massive dude who's so insanely strong. Why couldn't he just pick up Dyne? Like, I know he got shot in the leg, but he's like laying there on the cliff edge before they even shoot at his arm, just going, like struggling to hold Dyne. I know Dyne's a grown-ass man, but we see what he did with like President Shinra, right? And I don't know, Dyne's probably a little bit bigger than President Shinra, but still, Barrett is gigantic. That's a big fucking guy. His biceps are bigger than my torso. I think he could easily lift Dyne up with one arm. It's like one more thing with this scene that's not really a complaint or anything, it's observation. When it came to the original FF7, I guess I always assumed like their arms got shot off in that moment, and that like you get the guns on there eventually or whatever. And I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be based on like the actual lore of the games or whatever. But at least when it comes to this version, that seems to be almost what they're conveying, because at the end of the scene, you hear like a loud squish sound, which would be like indicative of a limb being shot off or whatever, and you see a lot more blood fly than what's been flying the entire time. But of course, it's a T-rated game. They can't show them losing limbs and shit. Really quickly, looking back at the scene, like Barrett does say after the flashback that he just couldn't use his arm anymore, so I guess I just kind of missed that detail. Like, it was never really said that he lost his entire arm from the gunshots. But in the original game, he always assumed that Dyne was alive because he heard about like somebody else getting their armor operated on, whereas with like Rebirth, he seems to be surprised to see Dyne, which is kind of a weird change that I don't know how I feel about. Anyways, we hop back to the present day where we're going to confront Dyne. Barrett wants to do this by himself, which is more or less what it was in the original game where Barrett wants to fight Dyne by himself. One thing I absolutely love about this scene is that whenever Tifa wants to help Barrett, Cloud actually steps in and agrees that Barrett needs to do it by himself, which I believe is a bit of a callback to the top of the Shinra building where Cloud wants to fight Rufus by himself. Barrett offers to help, but Cloud says he needs to do it by himself.
I'll buy you guys some time.
I can stay here. Back you up.
Barret, I'm asking you. Please.
I'm sorry, but I need to do this alone.
Barret.
It
Go.
was a really good scene just because it's almost like Cloud repaying that debt from Remake where he wanted to do the fight with Rufus solo. Barrett stepped back and let him handle it. And it's kind of the same thing here, right? Where the party's wanting to help Barrett in this moment, but Cloud realizes that Barrett needs to handle this by himself as well. From here on out, things are similar-ish to the original game, but the circumstances are quite different. You do have the confrontation between Barrett and Dyne, the fighting, him realizing Marlene's alive, all that shit. But everything else is quite different. For one, in this game, Dyne is captured in the shed we're about to walk into. I think he's captured by Solomon Gus, which was Mr. Coates in the original FF7, or at least Solomon Gus's people, whatever. Which is such a drastic change to the original FF7, because in the original FF7, Dyne was the leader of the Krill prison, right? Like, you have to get his permission to do the Chocobo race to get out of the prison. Of course, we go there, we fight him, he gets the pendant from Dyne, and that's how Coates knows that Dyne is dead, right? And that's how we get the permission to do the Chocobo race. All drastically different here. I just don't know how I feel about that, because it's such a drastic character change, because I gave you a little bit of backstory on who Dyne was even before the confrontation, right? The fact that he's the leader of all the people down there. Like, now that he's not that when it comes to Rebirth, what the hell was he doing before he shot up the gold saucer? Since he wasn't the leader down there, where was he living at? Was he down in the prison still, but they just didn't say that or something, and he's worked his way up to the gold saucer and killed everybody? Or was he living out somewhere else in the Krell region and just happened to shoot up the gold saucer the day we were there? I don't know. Anyways, here we get the initial confrontation between Barrett and Dyne. They kind of play up the crazy side of Dyne, because obviously in the original game he was kind of out of his mind, to the point that once he realizes that Marlene's alive, he's willing to kill her, so she can be with her mom type shit. But in this case, he seems to think that Eleanor and Marlene are there present right now, and it's supposed to be Eleanor's birthday, and they want to get a plate for Barrett or whatever. It's another scene that I'm not entirely sure how I feel about, because for one, it's a little on the nose, he's a crazy person, so he's picturing his dead family or whatever. But also, I'm not sure what the point of the scene is, because why is he picturing them? Because he just went on a rampage to kill people and people that are associated with Shinra or whatever because of what they did to Krell and his family, right? So he, in those moments at least, he knows Eleanor and Marlene are dead, but in the shed here, he thinks that they're there. I don't know if he's just going crazy because he's been locked in the shed for a while. Is it heat stroke from being locked in the shed in the desert? I don't know. So this particular part right here I actually did enjoy a bit, just because they mentioned Barrett's wife Myrna, which I didn't know if they were going to do, because with the original game, Barrett mentions her when he's giving the backstory for what happened with Krell and what happened with him and Dyne and stuff. And that hadn't happened yet, and we're getting up to the confrontation already, and they've yet to even mention Barrett's wife, but they finally did it. Another interesting detail that I actually do like is what causes Dyne to snap in this game is seeing Cloud, because obviously Cloud's dressed in a soldier outfit, and with the pure hatred that Dyne has for Shinra, it makes sense that he'd instantly get pissed off, but also get mad at Barrett, because Barrett's the one who wanted the town of Corel to use a Mach reactor, right? It's technically in a roundabout way Barrett's fault that happened. Obviously, the entire blame is on Shinra, but I think it makes sense that Dyne would instantly snap as soon as he sees Cloud. And obviously, this is where things start to get heated between Dyne and Barrett. And actually, another detail, again, that I actually like from this is apparently Barrett's been saying the take the load off your shoulders line for a long time, because Dyne actually quotes him.
I'm here to help you.
You? Here to help me? He's here for you. To take the load off your shoulders, right?
Same old shit.
But it's okay, because I'm here for you, to help take the load off your shoulders.
This is, of course, where we get the one-on-one fight with Barrett and Dyne, which I think, for the most part, is a pretty damn good fight. I think it's, the best fight, maybe mechanically, up to this point, just because Dyne hits pretty hard, so you actually got to use, the environment, the scraps of metal to kind of cover the shots. And he also has, a bunch of, area of effect attacks, so you got to kind of be moving around constantly when it comes to this fight. There's not really a whole lot more that I want to add when it comes to the fighting aspect of this, other than one thing that we're definitely going to talk about here. Because I'm not really, the fighting combat guy when it comes to the Remake project. His phase, though. Every boss, of course, when it comes to the Remake project, you do so much damage to them, they enter a different, state or whatever. Dyne's is insane. He just starts, fusing with metal or something. Shit grows out of his gun arm and stuff. And he gets, a bunch of tentacles, some Doc Ock shit. and I don't understand it. I mean, his first actual phase after you do so much damage to him is him like shooting these like trap mine things around the battlefield, which that's relatively normal. That's fine. But let's take a look at the next phase.
Come on. You can do this. You can still save him.
What the shit is happening? What the hell was that shit, bro? Is Dyne Magneto? Like, what is... I don't understand it. Like, admittedly, I don't know entirely what you do for, like, a second or, I guess, third phase, whatever you want to say. What you do for him? Like, I don't know. Maybe his gun opens up to more fucking guns. It opens up and there's more barrels or missiles or... I don't know what you do, exactly. But what the hell was that shit? I know it's just like a boss fight, so maybe there's no lore to it or anything, but it's like... What the fuck was growing out of his... What were the tentacles growing out of his gun? What was that shit, dude? Like, it's weird. It's just strange. He's like got this gigantic metal arm and stuff, and then he gets the fucking lasers on the back that we... I want to attempt to give it some sort of purpose or meaning or lore. There is magic in the world outside of materia. There is people like Reeve, who's an Inspire, that has the ability to bring inorganic things to life or whatever, and that's how he like controls Kate Sith and all that other shit. And maybe Dyne just has some sort of powers too, and maybe that's where Marlene kind of gets her connection to like the planet type shit or whatever. When it comes to the original FF7, it's possible with the remake project she is sensing stuff because of Aerith, like, you know, touching her or whatever, giving her the knowledge or whatever. Maybe that's what they're doing in the remake project, but maybe Dyne has some sort of abilities. But again, I am absolutely reaching, trying to make sense of this shit. Anyways, jumping to where the fight's over, Dyne's not dead yet, obviously. We also got to get to the reveal of Marlene being alive, which in the original FF7, that happens before the fight. Barrett doesn't want to fight anymore, though. Doesn't want to put Dyne down, doesn't want to kill him. Actually takes his gun arm off, which is kind of interesting. I guess up to this point, I never really thought about how I thought Barrett's gun arm worked, but it's just like easily detachable, which makes sense, I guess, because you do find new weapons and stuff as you journey through the world. Now that they're actually in the moment, of course, too, like Dyne doesn't necessarily want to kill Barrett either. You can see he's a bit conflicted, talking about Eleanor telling him, begging him not to kill Barrett, that Barrett technically did nothing wrong, but then who is going to answer for what happened? And then right after this, we have some Shinra troops that show up, which initially was a bit jarring because I was like, why the hell are they here? But I think after having played this and then revisited it for the video, I think they're here to get Dyne, because obviously Dyne just got done shooting up the Gold Saucer, and Dyne was captured by Solomon Gus. I think Solomon Gus like told them where he was at, where he was captured at, because we do have some Turks that show up after this, and Palmer. We then get kind of a callback to the flashback where Dyne's under fire, but this time around Barrett, you know, tackles him to safety. And this is where we start to get into the fate of Dyne, where he started to realize what he's been doing, the wrong that he's been doing. And they kind of allude to him wanting to unalive himself like he did in the original FF7. He even says that he knows what he has to do, but he can't, as in he can't go through with it.
Marlene are waiting for me, but I can't bring myself to join them.
And obviously this is where Dyne learns that Marlene is still alive, which it's a great scene at first, like him getting to see that picture and how she resembles her mother and everything. But then he's like mad at Barrett for having taken Marlene from him, which is kind of weird because he's already like having a clear head, realizing that he's been the bad guy and he wants to kill himself, but he can't or whatever. So I don't know why he's then like reverting back to being mad at Barrett for this. It's almost maybe like maybe another callback to like when he wanted Marlene to die in the original, where he's wanting to like take her to meet Eleanor or whatever, but like now he's mad that Barrett saved Marlene's life. It's just strange. Like, I get him being mad at Barrett because of the whole Corel stuff, but also like the fact that he's thought Marlene's been dead this whole time, but Barrett's been raising his daughter, right? So like in that regard, like Barrett's taking everything from him. I get that, but like obviously he saved Marlene's life. We think get close to the end here where Dyne says some stuff that's somewhat similar to the original FF7, where he talks about like his hands being stained with blood, which in the original it was something along the lines of his hands being too stained to hold her anymore. But I like what he says in the original about Marlene not knowing who he is, essentially, because how old was she back then, right? She wouldn't even know him. Like, she was a newborn back then. She would have no idea who this guy is. She'd been raised by Barrett her entire life. This is, of course, where Dyne has to die, right? He sacrificed himself to take out a bunch of Shinra troops that were just about to attack them, which is a noble death, right? It's technically like a heroic death. It's a little bit better than the original in that he doesn't have to kill himself, right? He actually gets to go out doing something good. A couple things here, though. For one, he takes a lot of shots, which, going back to like the arm thing, is a little ridiculous outside of the battle in this world, but maybe he's magical, powerful, maybe the adrenaline, whatever. We've seen it with Zack, but also Zack is a soldier. And the last thing that Dyne says to Barrett is he needs to carry that guilt, that weight, which may or may not be a callback to something Barrett said in Remake after like chapter 13. Whenever you save Wedge, Barrett actually says something about carrying that weight. But also could be like Dyne quoting Barrett. Maybe something that Barrett used to say in the past, similar to the load off your shoulders things that he was quoting him earlier for.
You carry that guilt, that weight.
And then we get something that I wasn't expecting. We actually get to see Eleanor, like, as Dyne's dying, he, like, pictures her, which was kind of cool, just because, like, this is a character we've heard about, you know, for a long time now, obviously, with the original FF7 all those years ago. But we never got to see her. I don't think she ever even had, like, art or anything like that. We just no concept of what she looked like, but that's Marlene's mother.
I missed you.
Overall, I'll say that I think that the Dyne segment when it comes to FF7 Rebirth was handled well. I think it was good, maybe even great. I still prefer the original. I think there's a lot of just aspects of that I prefer with, like, the character of Dyne and how all that's handled. But I do like a lot of the voice acting in the scene. This was the first segment of Rebirth so far for me. They hit me emotionally. Actually, it's just how much I've been a fan of that segment of the original FF7. Finally getting to hear some of the aspects of it voice acted. Obviously, some of the dialogue and circumstances are changed and things like that. But it's getting to finally see this voice acted in, like, way better quality and graphics, and getting to hear some of John and Eric Bentley's, like, best line deliveries, like, so far, in my opinion, with the remake project. It just hurt. It just hit me. Like, it got your boy choked up a little bit. There is still a world out there where I would have liked to not have to see Dyne die. Like, maybe he just realizes the bad shit that he's done and he's, like, just goes off secluded and we don't ever have to see him again or something or whatever. But there had to be a bit of justice, I suppose. He did kill a lot of innocent people. So I guess it makes sense that he has to die by the end of all that. But also he gets to go out a bit of a hero, you know, taking out some Shinra troops that were just about to attack him and Barrett and everything. And he doesn't have to die in the way that he did with the original FF7. Based on, like, the dialogue that him and Barrett have in Rebirth, like, he wants to die, he just doesn't have, like, the strength or whatever you want to call it to do it himself. So it makes sense that he'd, like, willingly jump in front of the bullets for Barrett and take a bunch of troops out with him. The only other thing that I'll say is I wanted more from the flashback. We talked about a lot on the channel throughout the last, like, couple of years, I believe. Like, almost more like a playable, almost like a calm flashback sort of thing with, like, Barrett and getting to see the original town of Corel and just getting to see Barrett's wife, like, getting to see Eleanor, which was really cool, and I'm glad that we got that. But it makes me think, like, why didn't we get to see Myrna, too? Like, getting to see Barrett's wife. It's just, I'm curious, man. Just give her, like, a face, right? Like, I just kind of curious what Barrett's wife was like. He never doesn't talk about her. I'm hoping, obviously, I haven't got through Rebirth yet. I'm still, you know, progressing through my playthrough. I don't know if she's ever brought up again, if he ever talks about his wife, but that's something, like, I want as well from the remake project. Like, you had a wife. You had an entire life before the town of Crow was destroyed. Like, how long were they married? Like, she had to have some sort of massive impact on his life, you would think, as his damn wife. So it's just, I hope we can get more of her at some point. This video is kind of big. Like, I didn't know it was going to be this long. I knew we were going to go in depth on it and talk about, like, the majority of what happens throughout the Dyne segments of FF7 Rebirth. But it's my favorite segment from the original FF7, so I want to put some time into it, right? We're going to talk about it. It's going to be as long as it needed to be, essentially. I think they handled it well. Like I said previously, I think it was good to great, whatever you want to say. I do prefer the original, of course. There were aspects of the Rebirth story version of this, whatever, that I'm not the biggest fan of, but overall, I think it was good. Of course, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. If you've played FF7 Rebirth, if you got to this point, what were your thoughts? Like, after finishing the Dyne segment, overall everything, like the story elements, some of the newer shit, the new spins on the story, but also, like, the Dyne fight, like Magneto Dyne, like, what were your thoughts on that? Like, I'm curious what people think of that as well. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @YT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.